Well, hello and welcome to another edition of the podcast that is Life After Work. We're typically four people, all in our 50s and no longer working, get together. And it's been a little while, and we're one person down because he's switched off from digital life for a few days. But we're here anyway. I am here with the dentist to the stars, former dentist to the stars, Ash Sharma, a City fan as well. Good afternoon, Ash. How are you?
And very happy blue moon to you. Afternoon all. How are we all?
We're all right.
Very good, thank you, Ash.
And we're also here with somebody who I think could become an Olympian. He's certainly in his age group. He's doing very well. He goes around the world taking part in triathlons. Isn't that right, Phil Harrison?
You were right about the doing it. I'm not so sure you're right about a future Olympian. I think, well, I'm not sure that boat has sailed. I don't think that boat ever existed, frankly. It was never built, but enjoying it nonetheless.
You know what? Don't curtail your dreams. Don't curtail your dreams. And I'm Rod Maxwell. I am presenter in Radio Alti for the last few years, and delighted to be part of this podcast. It is a podcast called Life After Work, and we all normally take a topic of conversation and give our point of view on it for what it's worth. And today, we haven't been doing this for a while, and there are so many topics we've had to literally put them in a hat and draw them out. And funny enough, the draw today was to talk about the World Cup. We're not going to actually talk about the football. We're going to talk about the ethics and the politics behind the World Cup, and maybe the time of year, Qatar as a nation, some of the challenges there. I mean, guys, I don't think Northern Ireland haven't been in the World Cup since, I think it's 86 or 82. I can't remember which one. In some ways, it's just something that happens to Northern Irish people, and you adopt a team. My adopted team will be England, but if I look at football more generally, I guess part of me thinks this whole decision to go to Qatar, it's either something that's going to, in a few years, be seen to be enlightened, because it opens the football to a nation and a society that possibly hasn't been open to football as much, and it might also open up those nations and their cultures, etc., and help us. Or it's going to be a complete disaster, and you're going to say why. It's one of those that hangs in the balance.
Well, who knows? But I don't think certainly it was built on a corrupt process. There's that's for certain. But we are where we are now. I don't think it's. We'll probably go into this in the next half hour or so. But I like your optimism. But I'm not sure. I'm sure that wasn't the motivation behind putting it in Qatar, was to do anything in an enlightened fashion. I'm not sure equally it will have that effect. I think it's more about money than anything else. I'm sure if it was genuinely about taking football around the world to new, I don't want to use the word markets even, because that implies the money again, new audiences, that they could have, there were much better places to pick, whether South America or Africa. The places that haven't had it before. Well, South America has, but there are places in South America that could have taken it where it's not been before. But particularly Africa, that might have been the best choice. So I think the decision to take it there in the first place was very poor, and I'm not sure that it's going to have, like you hope for, a beneficial impact on bringing sport to an adoring new audience.
Well, yeah, no, I agree. I mean, if you even Sepp Blatter, that great bastion of decency and being a straight arrow, we can rely on everything he said. He came out, was it a few weeks ago, basically just saying that it should never have gone to Qatar in the first place. He just came out with it. But the reason he cited, he said it was too small, and they never even considered human rights.
Yes.
I mean, what the hell?
Well, was he not in charge of FIFA when the vote was taken? I mean,
absolutely. No, he did it with that in mind. He called it a mistake, which I think was is a bit of a smokescreen in itself. And as you say, Ash, spouting spurious reasons for why it was a mistake. It was a mistake for other reasons.
So I believe Qatar is smaller in landmass than Wales, or has a smaller population than Wales, I think.
Yeah.
So, the thing that it makes me think is there's huge amounts of money being spent on these stadia that will be world class. But actually, the legacy of them will probably be that in 20 years' time, there'll be a couple of thousand people watching kids' football in them type thing.
But Rod, it's worse than that, because if the point you make there is really good, because what they really are tombstones. Each of these stadiums are actually tombstones for 6,000 workers, which have just basically, have been slave labor. They lived in squalid conditions for all these years. No worker rights, passports confiscated off them, and then you've got to carry on working. You can't go away, you can't complain, you can't moan. If anyone fell off a scaffolding or anything, no hard hats, no high vis, they actually didn't care. So it's worse than that. If you see these stadiums, that the thing, and you look at them, every time you think, oh, that's brilliant, think even deeper, go deeper into it, you'll find out how many people died because of that, to make those stadiums.
It's a very good, it's a very, very good point. Now, here's the thing. If you are a Harry Kane or you are Cristiano Ronaldo, right, and you care deeply about that type of thing, you're still going to go and play in the World Cup. So it almost, to me, is that there's such a momentum about it and it's such a big event. It would be a very brave professional footballer, or it would be a very brave country that turns around and says, you know what, we're not taking part because we don't believe it's ethically right. Yeah. And so will all of this be in a couple of years washed over because it'll have happened and it'll be some sort of success, and therefore it's counterproductive. It has no impact if you make a stand against it.
Well, I was going to go off on one angle of that to say I don't even know why they do. What are they gaining out of it? Is it just a vanity project to have the World Cup in their country? I can't imagine that it will bring economic benefits, and I'm sure it'll be a sporting success as well because the world loves football. So I don't doubt that for a minute, but I can't see what in the longer term, other than a reputational thing and vanity, what it's going to do. As you say, the stadia are going to be mausoleums. The infrastructure they could have bought and developed more cheaply if that's what they needed to do anyway, without having a World Cup there. If it some countries benefit from it having a stimulus to the construction industry and they build infrastructure in the whole country and it stimulates the whole economy. I don't think Qatar needs that. I can't see them benefiting to that degree. So I'm not quite sure what they hope to gain.
I mean, even if you look at advertising, normally you get things like Coca-Cola or Adidas really lauding it, saying we are part of this World Cup. They're not. They're doing what's called second-tier advertising, whereby they're attaching themselves to FIFA, to football, as opposed to Qatar.
Staying away from it directly.
Yeah, that's how they do it. Have you noticed there's none of this? There's none of that. They're looking at their own individual brands, but no one is actually advertising the fact that they're attaching themselves to the World Cup itself. Because at the end of the day, it's hard to examine what Qatar is going to gain out of it. And then if you look at the grubby deals that have been done, apparently, if I can remember this correctly, I think Qatar agreed to buy from France some military planes. I think it's about £1 billion worth of it, in return for the votes and this, that, and the other. It just gets so seedy.
Well, this is it. It's just sort of sickening in the end. And can you be? I say it'll be a sporting success. I'm going to be watching it now with this in my mind, thinking, really, is this what should be happening? But to pick up on the other angle of your point, Rod, and I think it's a difficult one. If you're a player, is it fair to expect the players, like you say, it's their livelihood, it's their career, they're entitled to want to be able to perform on what is the biggest tournament in their chosen career in the world? Is it incumbent upon them to make those political stands at great personal sacrifice? Would I? I feel it's difficult. If there's a player out there who has made that stand, I would find it very admirable. But I would say I don't necessarily expect them to do that. I think it's putting too much on.
Well, the Australian team, didn't they come out with a video saying that they don't agree with various aspects of the Qatari regime? They did do that. But I think going back to your point about individual players, I mean, the decision's been made at a higher level than what they exist at, because they're sporting people. So that's been done now. They are where they are. So they've got, I think the biggest thing for football is that we have to ask ourselves, the ramifications of it, is the disruption of the season of football completely, dividing it into two. We're going to have football apparently in quarters rather than halves because it's so hot. It's just,
it was a ridiculous sporting.
Is that the decision? Anyway. It's going to be quarters then. Is that
I think I may have got that wrong, so apologies if I have. But that's what I heard. I think that because it's going to be so hot, isn't it?
There are going to be more drinks breaks, definitely. Yeah.
Well, I'm obviously a traditionalist, but I used to quite like the run up to World Cup. Your domestic season had finished. There was a buzz about going into the summer and the World Cup.
Yeah, exactly.
And there hasn't been that buzz in a way, in my view. And I find, I mean, our season is broken in half. I think it'll be quite interesting for the Premier League. That I think the second half of the season will be completely determined by what happens in the World Cup through injuries and success and momentum and that type of thing. And you can see something happening where one or two players get injured or something happens and it has a. I don't think it
derails their season.
Yeah. But I think I don't know. Part of me hopes that. Part of me expects that too many of these decisions are made for political gain and individual gain, and not for the game of football, and not thinking about the world. But they want us to try to believe that they're doing it for all the right reasons to make it the world game, etc. And of course, it is. It is. It doesn't have to just be played in Africa, Europe, or America. I mean, it should be played in the Middle East, and it should be played in Asia as it has been, but I don't know. It's something really rocked me when I saw the amount of money that's being pushed into Qatar and how small a country it is. It's very rich, but you sort of think there's going to be no ongoing legacy because they don't have it to pick up.
And another aspect that we've not touched on is them touting it as it's now going to be a green World Cup. What? Unbelievable. I don't know what the carbon footprint of the construction of the stadium will have been over the past 5 years, but there's no way they can pass this off as a green.
No, not at all. I mean, can you imagine? It's an oil producing country, isn't it? Yeah. It's just maybe that's why they're doing it.
What they should have done is got every single nation to sail there and make it a big round the world boat competition first of all, and so it's a bit like a triathlon, Phil, right? The first stage of it is see how many teams
got a row there.
See how many teams managed to get there under wind power, right? So no qualification, you just had to get there, and then the extra points for whoever came with the lowest carbon footprint, and then you had the football, So I think they missed the opportunity.
You know what? In all that jest, I wonder whether. Do we know where the next World Cup's going already? After this, no, it was Russia and Qatar was done as one deal, wasn't it? In one go, but now we don't know the next one, do we? Or do we? Anyway, I was just thinking maybe they should put that at the front of the agenda for the next choice to make the greenest possible. With a World Cup tournament with all sorts of stipulations, and it might be about the way all the teams travel there, the location it's put in, which
they've missed that.
I don't know.
They've missed that trick. I think one of the reasons why it went to Qatar was to actually for them to repackage themselves in a different light so people can see that, and they've absolutely shot themselves.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Squarely in the foot in terms of rights for gay rights. In terms of equality for workers there, because so many people died, and in terms of football disruption, they were trying to make it available to the world. They just disrupted what they've done is they've actually disrupted the football infrastructure globally, you know, in Europe, the world, like you say, Rod, the season's been split into two now, so God knows how the second season's going to finish. But I mean, Arsenal, if Jesus gets injured, that's their season gone, basically.
Well, it's so just out of the 2026 FIFA World Cup has been awarded, I believe, and it's been awarded to Canada, Mexico, and United States.
Right, okay.
So there'll be 16 host cities across those three countries.
So Mexico's involved in that as well, then.
Apparently, that is true. So yeah, the United 2026 bid beat a rival by Morocco during a final vote in Moscow. It will be World Cup hosted by. It'll be the first World Cup since 2002, hosted by more than one nation. So there you go. United States last hosted. I mean, the interesting is United States hosted the World Cup in 1994. So why they went in with the three? I think partly is the cost. You know, it's the cost of hosting it, etc., etc. But there you go. Interesting. I mean, how do you make that carbon neutral when you got people flying in across even going across the stadia of those three countries?
If you look at any organization like that COP8, what was it? That COP, whatever it was, 22, whatever it is.
27.
By its very nature, it becomes an anachronism. The fact, how are you getting there? If they're going on about carbon footprints and we should do less flying, use less hang on a second. Well, tell us how you got there.
This is a slight digression. Will bring me back to the main topic. But while we're on that, obviously I went off to Portugal recently.
Was that carbon neutral, by the way?
Well, this is the point of my raising this and my question. Have I just been had the fact that when you buy your ticket, there was an option to pay a bit more, and it wasn't a lot, to say you can make your trip green by offsetting the carbon by paying a bit more. Have you seen that?
No.
So I did it to sell my conscience, I thought, and I've not looked into it further. I meant to at the time to think, have I just been done by?
How would they do that? How would they offset it?
Some trees.
Well, there are ways, aren't there? But whether they're I say legitimate or not, because the UK offsets its carbon footprint by selling it. It can buy someone else's, which isn't really what the whole thing is about, is it? That's just playing with quotas. But whether it's planting trees or investing in projects that reduce the carbon coming out of power stations somewhere, I'm hoping, and I believe at the moment, unless you're going to tell me I'm wrong, that no, it is a legitimate thing. But your money can be put into furthering, literally reducing the carbon coming out somewhere else. So I did it to sell my conscience, and therefore, to bring us back to the point, can those sorts of schemes be run that says if you're going to build a stadium, it has to be offset? If you're going to get, I don't know how many, 32 countries flying their sports teams into your country, it's got to be offset. Can you do that? I think technically there is a way, but I wonder whether we're just skirting around the edge of what the world should be doing, which is, as I say, rather than talking about these, that might be playing with quotas, like I was saying, rather than tackling the real nub of the problem, which is finding ways to produce energy in a non-damaging way to start off with.
Anyway, digression. Those sort of carbon quotas are just basically ways of the polluting countries to carry on polluting whilst working within the regulations. I
think you're right. But even if that is a first step to saying, look, let's hold ourselves as a world to a limit. But yes, I take your point.
I mean, there's so many issues associated with this World Cup. Anyway, I've just looked. There's a headline from February 21 that it says 6,500 migrant workers have died in Qatar since the World Cup awarded.
Yeah, I heard that.
You know, and that is shocking. I mean, it's absolutely.
It is, and because these things should be surely baked in right at the start. FIFA, if it's any sort of world organization, should have its charter that says, and it's not for me to pick the things in their charter, but there's some obvious ones about human rights, green stuff, like we were saying to me. And once you've got your charter, you can say any country winning a bid will have to make sure they're in line with that charter. So it would rule if human rights and LGBT rights are going to be in there, then it's up to then the government saying, so Qatar would have to say, right, this is how we're going to stay within your charter. And if they can't demonstrate it, they don't get it. I mean,
well, it's saying 12 migrant workers from the 5 South Asian nations have died each week since the night in December 2010, when the streets of Doha were filled with ecstatic crowds celebrating Qatar's victory.
It's absolutely appalling.
That is appalling. And
how many a week? Sorry, right?
12 migrant workers a week for 12 years. 6,500 migrant workers from India, Pakistan, Nepal, Bangladesh, and Sri Lanka have died in Qatar since it won the right to host the World Cup 10 years ago. That's The Guardian reporting that back in February 2021.
That's even worse.
I mean, if you're FIFA, right, you look at that and you just turn around and say brand reputation does not allow you to let this happen. You know, it's but I think here's the biggest thing is football. We've known for a long time football has lost any sort of reality, any sense of reality in a lot of ways, and for this not to be an issue, and in some ways the thing shouldn't have been allowed to continue. There should have been some checkpoint that says, you know what, actually, this is bad. Too many people are dying making it. It's costing too much money. The thing should have been almost, paused or something.
I think you're right, Rod. And I think this one scenario here is that this could be a very troubled World Cup, with this being a trigger for protests. At the very least, it's the very fact we're talking about it. It started to raise these issues as current topics in the media. So actually, by Qatar hosting the World Cup, maybe what it's done is drawn what will be very unwanted attention to its regime and its modus operandi. And I think this could run throughout the World Cup.
Well, you feel you have to, because if you look at football fans, there's going to be a proportion of football fans are going to be, they're going to be gay, and they're going to want to come to a game and come to a match with their partner.
Yeah.
If they're doing that, if you're going abroad, you should be able to go with who you want. You should be able to hold hands. You should be able to, at this point, I don't think they're going to be allowed to do that.
Well, actually,
it's illegal, isn't it?
It's worse than that, Ash, because I believe some of the football associations have actively encouraged their LGBTQ members who will be going to watch it to not show any relationship, any affection, any sign that they are sexually oriented that way. And that in itself is ridiculous. The fear of being arrested because you might be gay and a football fan, it's not the way FIFA should want to be represented in this day and age. And I think you turn around and you say, it's like FIFA has certain principles and certain conditions, right? And so one of it should be your nation needs to be much more open to, say, LGBTQ, right? And if you're not, then you can't host the
exactly. That was what I was talking about.
Exactly. But if you're looking at, those basic rights are enshrined in equality. Everyone should have that. Flip it on its head. Let's just say you're going to a country X, okay? And they say that, yeah, we won the World Cup, blah, blah, blah. But guess what? We are not we can't allow coloured people and white people to hold hands. Yeah. Or Asian people. Yeah. How would that be? Yeah. Would you still allow that World Cup to go there?
Like,
this is like Munich. This is black athletes going to Munich was it just before the First or Second World War?
Exactly. So you have to ask yourself, are the rights here equal to the rights of any other person? So I've just thought of that idea, the analogy there. Is that if it was, if you go to the deep south in America, it's absolutely frowned upon that you can think like that, a black person and a white person cannot hold hands or anything like that. But just imagine a country, you said that you're welcome in here, we'll tolerate you, but you can't hold hands. That is not apartheid.
It's not tolerant.
It's not tolerant. How the hell is this happening?
No, exactly. And I mean, you raised a good point earlier that I'll bring us back to that. What's the role of the sponsors in this? Because I haven't really thought about this up to this point. So I don't know how it works, whether you've paid your sponsorship now before this decision was made. So Adidas or whoever, MasterCard, are you already committed? And now you've got this situation where you maybe maybe not bothered as a corporation, but you'd hope they are and think, no, we don't want to be associated with these values. What do they do? Do they withdraw their name? I know you said they're going for trying to be seen to be sponsoring football rather than the Qatar World Cup, but by association, if you're named there as a sponsor during the tournament, are you going to turn some of your potential customer,
or basically sponsor a shirt, or sponsor a football team, sponsor the ball, or sponsor certain things, not try to
I get that, but it's still association.
Phil, I think this is why in some ways the World Cup feels like it's been muted, because I think brands have not been pushing it. I mean, if you forget about the time of year when it is, this does not feel like we're on the eve of the World Cup. There is no...
I know what you're saying there, Rod, and I agree with you to a large degree. But I will say, and I think I said this before when we discussed the Olympics, I'm the kind of person who, the week before, I'll be thinking, with the Olympics, can't be bothered with it. Football World Cup, yeah, I don't know, not bothered. But the minute it starts, I'll be there and into it. So
I know, but
I take your point.
It just doesn't feel like we're ramping up to a World Cup, and it feels like everybody's sitting on the fence. Brands, I mean, it's more than just brands marketing it, because that's a material thing. But
I know, but that
adds to the lead up to it, doesn't it? And you know, kids buy T-shirts that got the World Cup on it. Maybe it's got Coca-Cola on it, but what the hell? What harm can it do? It's all about building up some excitement. This has no theater. It feels like one that might be hugely successful, but I think they're so worried about it, and there are so many precautionary factors, and there's so many restrictions. You know, I can't see that it'll be a great event, and it's not going to be a festival of football the way the World Cup should be, because the World Cup actually is a festival of cultures as well as anything else.
Yeah,
and you're not going to. I don't think you're going to get that. It's going to feel very sterile, and it's going to feel like you're parachuting people in to play games and then parachuting them out again. And you know, often people have gone to, they've gone to Japan, they've gone to America, or they've gone to Spain, and they bring something back from that country because they've been there. I don't know that's going to work this time.
Yeah, I agree. It'll be interesting to see.
I've got a solution though. I personally think what they should have done is they should have got the whole thing just sponsored by PS4, and every player was just given a PS4. They could have stayed at home, so it would have been good for the environment, right? No footprint, and they were themselves on PS4, and they controlled themselves. So it was just electronic games. Because at the end of the day, it might as well be in some ways, you know. So there you go, a completely virtual World Cup for 1 year.
No, I mean, going back to what you were saying before, in terms of, when you get the preamble to the World Cup, you'll get your supplements in your papers, in the Sunday papers. Panini will be coming out with their stickers. And
Panini have got the album.
Have they? But they're not advertised. It's very, very
well, there you go. It's not being advertised, is it?
No,
Panini are doing a World Cup.
Anything, nothing.
It's out.
I mean, even if you look at FIFA, the football, I mean, as I was saying about the FIFA, they would have been going bonkers about it, being World Cup this and FIFA on your Xbox and this and the other. Nothing, absolutely nothing. Nobody wants to be trumpeting this World Cup and being connected to the Qatari regime, because it's toxic, isn't it?
Sitting on the fence. Here's a slightly off on a tangent, but let's just talk about CR7 for a moment. Cristiano Ronaldo, he's going to the World Cup at 37 years of age. Lots of issues around his whole profile at Manchester United, etc., etc. Do you think that when he comes back from the World Cup, it'll be hasta la vista, or
he's out? He's out, isn't he? With what he's done now, I don't think there's any way back, and I think he knows it. In fact, I would say that is why he's done it.
He wants to be sacked, basically.
Yeah.
Doesn't he?
Yeah.
I tend to agree.
He won't play for United again.
Well, I think he'll end up playing for FC Miami or whatever club Beckham has.
Right, question for you then, Rod. Okay, you're a lifelong Red. How much has this blotted his copybook? How much less of a hero is he now?
Oh, completely. For me, he has not read the mood music on this. In that. His petulance, his lack of team ethics, he's undermined a number of his teammates, previous professionals, and Ten Hag, who, and I just monitor the Twitter a little bit, and I see that not many United fans are coming out in support of Cristiano, and I think he is completely lost the plot on this. And it's sad because in some ways he is 37. To play in the Premier League week in, week out is hard, right? And United are playing so much better without him. So much better. I mean, we've still got a long way to improve. What he needed to be was diplomatic, shut up, and go to the World Cup, enjoy the World Cup, and then go at the end of the World Cup, go to another club somewhere. Nobody actually wanted him. Nobody came in for him,
Well, is the story, is it just the rumours thing that City were going to sign him, so it was just to hijack yet another one of those to hijack him from going to City, like Sanchez? But the main point of this to me is that it's the team game. Once you allow an individual to become bigger than that, and certainly bigger than your manager, it's a problem Ferguson would never have.
Never. He would never have tolerated
it. Yeah, but Ten Hag has more kudos with the ownership of Man United than Ronaldo realizes. I actually think that Ten Hag's stock is high enough that he'll weather this, no problem.
Yeah, he will. And that's exactly how it should be, because it cannot work the other way around. And I don't understand. This happens. It's just another example of what happens quite often. Witness Chelsea. You're a player there. You were signing, and I'll use Sterling as the example. And it was a reasonable decision. They were a top club under a top manager. Everything looked good. All of a sudden, the manager gets sacked, and it totally changes the picture then. And I don't understand why. If I was a top player, so take Sterling signing for Chelsea, I'd have a clause in there that says, you change the manager within a certain time, I'm free to go, or some sort of.
Yeah, sure.
Because it changes everything. And the same with Ronaldo. If the deal's done with the club and not with the cognizance of the manager and the support of the manager, you've got this recipe for potential disaster. And it happens time and time again. I think Paris Saint-Germain are falling into the trap with Mbappe, if you believe the reports as well. And once you get a player that's bigger than the manager, you can't control a dressing room. And I come back to the point, it's a team game, and a manager has to do things for the best interests of the team as a whole, not individual players. Yeah. And it upsets individual players at times. That's understandable. But if you've got players powerful enough to make that count, it can be disastrous.
Well, exactly. No, absolutely right. Because if you look at all the best managers, the elite manager, Ferguson, he dismantled and recreated how many teams, Rod? 3, 4 Premier League teams?
Probably at least.
That's the sign of a great manager.
Great manager. He's done that. Over different and when anyone gets too big for their boots, Beckham, Scott Keane, off you go. There's the door. Off you go. Pep did that with Aguero. He said, if you don't sort yourself out, Joe Hart, Tatar, at the end of the day, no one's. So Ronaldo's. I don't know who his advisors are, if he has any. They've absolutely misjudged this. Totally misjudged it.
Well, they've misread the music, and as I say, I've been scanning the conversation about this specific thing on Twitter, and without being scientific about it, I think the majority of what I would call true United fans are 100% behind Ten Hag and his decision, and I think it makes both practical sense and a bit of emotional sense, which is we're building a little bit of momentum, not an awful lot, and he's 37 years of age, and it is one of the fastest, hardest leagues to play in. You cannot expect him, even at how good he has been or how fit he still might be for his age group, to do that. I think he's wanted to go to the World Cup. I think when he comes back, he will move on. You know, I think he'll be sold to probably America. I think because nobody else, where else would he go in Europe? I
Well, they
can't.
probably won't even sell him. They don't need to because I think wasn't he on a free?
He was on a free. I think it was 15 million or something we paid. But but the thing is, his wages is something like.
If you sack him, because surely to criticizing your employers.
Yeah,
you've
got to
got
be.
rights to sack.
They've got to have, right. Yeah, they'll have grounds to sack him. That's got to be gross misconduct.
Yeah,
saying,
it is gross misconduct, isn't
it? But the issue is you do not know what commercial deals they have signed that may be conditional on Ronaldo being at the club. You don't know, you know, and
true, but I don't believe whatever value they are, the United are better off keeping him because of those deals. That's
No.
they're better off just taking whatever the hit is on any commercial aspect.
The big interesting thing for me in this World Cup, from a footballing point of view, and we'll talk in other weeks about who's favourites, etc. for it, but is it being the first World Cup in the middle of a season. I think the Premier League, as other leagues, a Champions League as well, will be very much determined by how fit certain players come back from the World Cup, injury wise. And what's normally nice about tournaments like the World Cup is you see players emerge that you weren't aware of, often because they played in leagues that didn't have as much coverage. It'll be interesting to see what happens in the transfer window in January that is directly related to the World Cup. I don't know.
Yeah, I think you're right on both counts there, Rod. I think it's a tough enough season as it is, with having the World Cup right in the middle of it, with less than a week between the games that have just been played in the Premier League. I mean, and I watched a few of those games, and I thought you could tell that there were players thinking, I don't want to get injured here. I'm going to be.
Well, City was the big one, wasn't it, Phil? If you're City, Brentford, I mean, Foden, Grealish, they got Stones was being careful. No one was going.
Everyone's being careful. Nobody's busting a gut. They all want to be fresh.
When at the very last minute, when Tony went off to he would have brought him down, would have tackled him. He said, "Oh, I'm not doing this."
That's really quite interesting. Is that often you had players who put their club sides before their national teams, you know, because that's what was their bread and butter. But you're right. I do think a lot of players have played the season to be ready for the World Cup.
Yeah, it's a big thing for them, isn't it? Like I say, in some ways they can regard it as the pinnacle of the career. That's another debate for us, club versus country. But no, without doubt, this is going to it's going to get the focus of the players a week beforehand. And my point was that and it's backing up your point, what a short break. Where's the build up to the World Cup? It's just straight from Premier League packed schedule straight into the World Cup. And that's got to have a physical impact on them. It's a busy enough schedule. So I think you're absolutely right. We'll make a prediction that there'll be, I don't know, from the Premier League, there'll be half a dozen players come back injured who are crucial to clubs, who will therefore it'll have an impact by them not being available. So we'll come back on a future date and remind me to name those 6 players.
Yeah, that'll be interesting.
It's surely got to happen. You know, it's and even if it doesn't happen in the first week, it'll be the fatigue issue. Where do they get the break? Unless managers and clubs are very careful to manage.
Or it'll be the big squads like City and Liverpool, which will be able to absorb it. And then
I was going to go on to make that point that says that the players and clubs have got to be very careful to manage the squads with rotation. And therefore, as you say, helps. It does favour clubs with big squads, and so it's what you need to win a Premiership these days.
So it might fall into City's hands and Liverpool's hands, mightn't it? So,
well, I'm not sure. Liverpool, I think, are already suffering from that, aren't they? The fact that I don't think they have got a big enough. I'm not having a pop at Liverpool per se here, but I just think they have been very unfortunate with injuries already, and I think it's proven that they're already into their second string, and I think that's why they're faltering.
Phil, I actually, I agree with you on that, but I also think there could be an element to Liverpool where some of those players know that Klopp is playing his last season, managing his last season.
I know that's a theory. I don't go along with that one, I'll be honest. I think he's got another 2 or 3 seasons in him at Liverpool.
You think so?
I don't think he'll want to give up it. Just the only thing I think that might change that is what's going on with the ownership story at the moment with Liverpool.
Well, that's interesting. Yes.
Yeah. Well,
it comes back to the fact that if your employer, sorry, Ash, go on.
No, I was just going to say, I think you're right, because I think if he hangs fire apparently one of India's richest men, Mumbai. Oh, I forgot his name now. He owns what does he own? Gone away. He's very rich, 70 billion.
Is he called Sunak?
Sorry?
Is he called Sunak?
Yeah, so if he's so if he buys Liverpool, he'll be in the same field as Pep then. I thought it'd be ironic, wouldn't it? He's going on like no one can compete with City, no one can do this, that, and the other. Oh, geez.
I think you can buy Liverpool for 2.53 billion. So on that basis, if we take the economics of the Glazers, the three of us probably could chip in and pay for it, with somebody else's money. Not that I could ever do that, of course, but there you go. But look, I'll just finish on. I'm looking at the World Cup odds. I think Brazil seem to be first favourites.
Really?
Then France, Argentina, England in the top fourth, apparently.
France a second, really?
Well, unless I've got this. This is CBS World Cup odds, and it's got them in order. But I don't understand the odds because it's not like 4-1, 6-1. It's something odd. But it looks like Brazil are favourites for the tournament. Second favourites are France. Third favourites Argentina. England in fourth. Spain in fifth, then Germany, Belgium, Netherlands, Portugal, Denmark, etc., etc.
Yeah. I mean, it might be my lack of going back to your point about build-up. I've not really paid attention to that sort of stuff, but it might be my ignorance. But I wouldn't know who are particularly strong. No one stands out, do they? So in that sense, from a sporting point of view, it could be a really good World Cup in the sense it's quite open. I'm going to go with Argentina.
Argentina.
Well, FIFA, the other game, FIFA 23, whatever it is, they've done their, they run a artificial or virtual tournament, and apparently they've got it right in the last 2 times.
Oh, really?
Yeah, believe it or not. And they predicted a Brazil-Argentina final and Argentina to win, I think.
Really?
Oh, okay. Do you know? I think part of it is that the Champions League is now so big and it's so star-studded, and we've got so many, if you like, players from South America, Africa, etc., playing in both Premier League and in European football. The World Cup isn't that big step where you're seeing somebody that you don't normally get to see, or the style of football is something different. It's the Champions League is so big now. You're almost saying World Cup football week in, week out. So in some ways, the World Cup has lost that extra gravitas that it may have had years ago,
Well, especially now with Qatar, I think that's accelerated it even more, hasn't it?
Well, I tell you, they'll be having 15-minute drink breaks, and it'll be a Diet Coke break. So, that'll be the next thing. They'll be coming on with Diet Cokes. There's probably just water, but it's in a Diet Coke can.
I'm going to be a little bit flippant here now. So, do you know if footballers do actually score, are they allowed to hug? Are they allowed to cuddle? Are they allowed to, is it a usual handshake like they used to do in 1950s and 60s? Or can you,
Well, do you know what? It'd be an interesting thing to look back on this in a month's time and see how it all gone. I think there might be a few uncomfortable moments throughout this tournament.
I think there will be. At the end of the day, there will be.
I think it's going to be what happens outside of the actual stadia, potentially. But it'll also be interesting to see whether certain captains, and I think Harry Kane is one of them, have talked about wearing LGBTQ badges, for example, or emblems on their boots, or whatever like that.
Which I would have thought FIFA would be banning them from doing, and they're.
I think FIFA have.
So is there going to be a clash? What they're going to do?
Well, they just basically. I think I think if I remember, Radio 4 was saying that some of the individual football federations are just going to take the fine. If they get fined, they'll pay it.
Oh, what if they eject them from the competition? Do you think they'll go that far?
I don't think. Well, if they do, that's
don't think so.
I don't think that's going to happen.
I don't think they can do it.
If that happens, then other countries will follow, and then it all falls to pieces, doesn't it?
Yeah. Well, look,
that's what I mean by uncomfortable sort of.
Yeah, true.
Right.
Well, if you're interested to see what it's like in December when it's finished,
Let's end on a prediction then. Who's your final, do you think?
I don't know if they can meet. It'd be great if they did. I'd be great if it was like England, Brazil. That's the romantic in me.
England, Brazil.
Yeah, if it's and then England to win. But I think FIFA probably isn't too far wrong. Argentina, Brazil. They got really good squad.
Yeah. Now I don't know who would have said. Obviously, I said Argentina beforehand. It's hard to get Brazil out of my thoughts now.
Yeah.
If you hadn't said that about the FIFA prediction, no, it is really. I mean, Portugal. I think they'll get to the latter stages.
But they're flaky, aren't they? They're very flaky.
Well, they are a bit. They have got a bit of a pack. Well, they've come good in tournaments as well.
That when they had all their players.
I don't think
they've got a lot of quality in that squad.
Yeah, but they've also got a lot of issues, I think.
Yeah, especially now.
Yeah, I think so.
Who's your tips?
Do you know, I
Ronaldo, player of the tournament.
Oh, I wonder what the odds are.
You watch.
I don't. You know what? Ronaldo will be top scorer.
Player of the tournament.
Oh, I tell you what, I hope it goes reasonably well, right? You don't want these things, but the thing I'd love to see is some new footballers just take the stage, and we see some really, unbelievable football where they just take it to a whole level, and we see some players that have never taken themselves up a level, and they suddenly go up a level. And wouldn't it be lovely if some of those were English players?
Well, player of the tournament, Jude Bellingham.
Oh, there you go.
Grealish.
Maybe not. Anyway, we will see.
Right. Well, here that was interesting. I got to say, we're next week or whenever we come back, we will be with Mr. Paul Davis, I'm sure, and. But there you go. It was a bit of I thought it was a bit like grandstand or the sport. Maybe there's a future for us,
Oh, I mean, which one of us was Alan Hansen? Who made sense? I don't think it was me. No. I think it's either one of you two.
I'm not Alan Hansen. No way. No. You can't level that at me at all. Right, I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go.
Have a good week, chaps.
Yeah, have a great week, guys.
Take care.
And enjoy the World Cup.
Meet again.
Bye-bye.
Coming home.
Hey, there is a World Cup anthem, by the way. There's been for England. That's been recorded by Altricham's very own Nigel Carr. So check it out. It's I don't know.
I thought you were about to give us a rendition then, Rod.
Well, I think you should now add it to as the outro tune for our podcast, so you can edit this onto the end of it then.
Okay.
You have to pay money then, wouldn't you?
As you say, it's coming home. There you go. Right, we'll start it now. Take care. See you.